Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast, and welcome to your AEW Dynamite post-show. Starting off tonight, man, we have a Gold League Continental Classic Tournament matchup where it is Kyle Fletcher taking on Okada. The match itself, I thought was a good match, man. Back and forth matchup between Fletcher and Okada, with Fletcher keeping the pace of the match. Okada hits an elbow drop off the top rope, landing on Fletcher. Kyle and Okada both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Okada hitting a tombstone pile driver on Fletcher. Fletcher then hits a Michinoku driver on Okada in the middle of the ring, followed by Fletcher hitting a power bomb on Okada for a near fall. Okada then goes for a Rainmaker on Fletcher, but Kyle counters it with a roll-up, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and the winner of 3 points in the Continental Classic Tournament in the Gold League is Kyle Fletcher. Hats off to Kyle Fletcher for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a women's tag team tournament semifinal match where it is the Babes of Wrath taking on the Sisters of Sin. I thought it was an okay match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with the Sisters of Sin keeping the pace of the match. Julia Hart hits a standing moonsault in the middle of the ring, followed by Julia Hart going to the top rope and hitting a botched moonsault. But Willow Nightingale hits her signature power bomb in the middle of the ring, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match and advancing in the women's tag team tournament are the Babes of Wrath. Hats off to the Babes of Wrath for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have Samoa Joe's AEW title celebration. Joe comes out to the ring with the Ops, but Samoa Joe and the Ops are quickly interrupted. A truck is shown on the Titantron arriving to the arena, and in that truck is none other than Swerve Strickland. Swerve walks out to the backstage, from the backstage area, carrying a chain around his neck, followed by Adam Page following Swerve Strickland. Shibata then goes to the back, grabs the members of the Ops Dojo. Samoa Joe then talks about Full Gear. Video package was shown of Hook and Full Gear. Joe then brings out Hook. Hook grabs a microphone and says he is the best second-generational talent in the business. After that, the Ops are interrupted by none other than Swerve and Adam Page. Page and Swerve then both attack members of the Ops Dojo, sending a message to Samoa Joe. Moving on from that, we have a Blue League Continental Classic Tournament matchup where it is Jon Moxley taking on Mascara Dorada. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Moxley and Dorada, with Dorada hitting a Hurricane Rana on Moxley, followed by Dorada hitting a 450 off the top rope, landing on Moxley for a near fall. Dorada then goes for a shooting star press, but Moxley counters it with a chokehold. Referee sounds for the bell, and your winner of the match and the winner of 3 points in the Continental Classic Tournament is Jon Moxley. After the match, Jon Moxley interrupted by Toni Storm. Toni Storm comes out to the ring. She talks about Moxley, also mocking Marina Shafir. After that, Mina Shirakawa is here. She is standing at the ramp. Toni then picks her stipulation for their tag team matchup in the semifinals, and that stipulation is none other than a holiday death match for their stipulation. So interesting stuff there from Toni Storm. Moving on from that, we have a Gold League Continental Classic Tournament matchup where it is Kevin Knight taking on Darby Allin. I thought this was the match of the night. The match itself, man, I thought it was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Kevin Knight and Darby Allin, with Darby keeping the pace of the match. Kevin Knight hits a moonsault off the barricade on the outside, taking out Darby Allin. Kevin Knight then gets in the ring. He hits a coast-to-coast, taking out Darby Allin. Followed by Kevin Knight going to the top rope, hitting his signature UFO splash on Darby Allin. Pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and winner of 3 points in the Continental Classic Tournament is Kevin Knight. Hats off to Kevin Knight for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into the main event of AEW's Dynamite. It is a Blue League Continental Classic Tournament matchup where it is Orange Cassidy taking on Claudio Castagnoli. The match itself, I thought was a good match, man. Back and forth matchup between Cassidy and Claudio, with Cassidy keeping the pace of the match. Orange Cassidy then hits a Stun Dog Millionaire on Claudio in the middle of the ring, but Claudio gets up, hits a giant swing on Orange Cassidy in the middle of the ring. Orange Cassidy then hits 2 Orange Man punches on Claudio Castagnoli, followed by a beach break for a near fall. Claudio somehow gets up, hits a crazy uppercut on Orange Cassidy, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and winner of 3 points in the Continental Classic Tournament is Claudio Castagnoli. Hats off to Claudio Castagnoli for getting the win in this matchup. Couple of things I want to talk about, man, when it pertains to AEW Dynamite before I get the hell up out of here. Number one, it was a decent Dynamite. I'm not going to sit here and say it was a shitty Dynamite or it was the best Dynamite. It was an okay Dynamite at best. With that being said, there were some flaws. I will say, as far as I'm concerned, man, the Continental Classic Tournament. I want to talk about that and go into depth a little bit with that with you guys, man. I'm going to be honest. To me, the Continental Classic Tournament, the concept of it, I honestly feel like it's run its course for multiple reasons. You know, this is now back-to-back tournaments now that we had for the Continental Classic Tournament where Okada, who is technically the Continental Champion, is involved in the Continental Classic Tournament. I'm not a big fan of that because the winner of the Continental Classic Tournament should be the one facing Okada for the Continental Championship. Now we have Okada, who technically was the Continental Championship, even though he forfeited the title for this tournament, was the Continental Champion. Now, we had the match with Fletcher and Okada on Dynamite where Fletcher was successful with a roll-up on Okada and pinning him for the 1-2-3. Doesn't really make Okada look very strong going into the finals of the Continental Classic Tournament. So I'm not a big fan of the concept of having Okada as the champion in this tournament. Now, with that being said, do I think the tournament's a little bit better this year than it was last year? Yes, because the names that are in this tournament. We have Kevin Knight, Speedball Mike Bailey, Orange Cassidy, Claudio, Pac, John Moxley's also a part of this tournament. Mascara Dorada, like I mentioned earlier, Darby Allin. We have some decent names in this year's tournament. I just think the concept of the Continental Classic Tournament, I think in itself, has run its course, in my opinion. We also see Samoa Joe's title celebration that was quickly interrupted by Adam Page and Swerve Strickland. Now, I don't know where they're going to go with this when it pertains to Page and Swerve. There's a lot of, I wouldn't necessarily say hostility between Swerve and Page, but there's a humongous history here between both Swerve and Adam Page that goes back quite some time. So I don't know what the concept is of Adam Page teaming up with Swerve. Are they going to go after the Ops? Are they trying to go after Samoa Joe for the AEW World title? Is this something we're looking on the lines of a possible triple threat match going into World's End where Joe will be defending the AEW World title against Adam Page and Swerve Strickland going into World's End at the end of the year? I don't know. To be honest with you, and I told you guys, I'm happy that Swerve is back. I'm excited that Swerve is back. They need to have Swerve back. But my prediction at the end of that matchup between Page and Samoa Joe in that steel cage match is that we were going to see the return of MJF. Now, some of you that do remember this, maybe some of you guys don't. As far as I'm concerned, MJF still has a AEW title contract that he's still yet to sign. So I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if the contract's now non and void. I don't know what the deal with that is. To me, I thought MJF still had the contract to have a match against Adam Page. But we haven't seen the likes of MJF in quite some time. So, and now we get the return of Swerve, and Swerve looks like he has his sights set on Samoa Joe. Obviously, Adam Page wants his revenge with Samoa Joe and the Ops. I don't know if he's looking for a possible rematch, and that's why I mentioned the possibility of a triple threat match for the AEW World title, where Joe will be defending the AEW World title against the likes of Swerve Strickland and Adam Page at this year's World's End. So, we're going to see how that plays out. So, I'm not really sure where that or how that's going to go. I talked about the Continental Classic Tournament. And I mean, to be honest with you, we also had Tony Storm picking the stipulation for their tag team matchup, but it's going to be a holiday death match with Tony Storm teaming up with Mina Shirakawa to take on Megan Bayne and Marina Shafir. I think that should be a solid matchup between both teams. But I also believe that the women's tag team tournaments kind of fell flat as well. It's not as excited as I'm not excited about it as I once was when it was initially announced. I just feel like it's kind of run its course, to be honest with you. I don't really necessarily know what they're going to do with the women's tag team titles, to be honest with you, as far as the progression of where the title is going to be going, how many times it's going to be defended, or how important it really is going to be to AEW, because AEW they have a tendency not to really give a shit about their AEW titles, or they keep adding more titles that seemingly mean nothing for the company. Hence the AEW National Championship, which I personally believe they ripped it off Billy Corgan's NWA, just in my opinion. But I digress. But To me, I think at the juncture that we're at now with AEW and what we saw from Full Gear to what we saw after Full Gear, I mean, you could tell, man, that AEW is still in a very, very rough spot. If we're looking at ticket sales, if we're looking at ratings, and some people and some fans, look, I mean, I get it. Some fans don't give a shit about that. They didn't give a rat's ass about that. They're just there to watch AEW's product. Look, I get it. But unfortunately for me, I'm a content creator, and I'm going to dissect every single thing from whether it's Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, or AEW. That's just my job. AEW has its good times, and it has its bad times. And for the past couple years, AEW's kind of fell flat. And I mean, I made comments about this last week when it pertained to AEW Dynamite, that right now, to me, in my opinion, AEW is in a flux right now. Meaning that, Warner Bros. Discovery, the home of AEW right now, is in the process of being purchased by another entity, whether it's Paramount, Netflix, or Comcast, or some other entity that wants to purchase Warner Bros. Discovery. And this could become a huge problem for AEW, because I mentioned this last week. If Netflix somehow is the number one suitor to purchase Warner Bros. Discovery, and they have the money to do it, it could cause a humongous problem for AEW in the aspect of possibly Netflix just completely getting away from AEW and not showcasing AEW talent or producing AEW shows because of the relationship that Netflix has currently with Monday Night Raw. So that could be a humongous issue for AEW. There's also Paramount Plus. Now, credit, there's no wrestling technically on Paramount Plus, but the UFC, who's owned by TKO, which TKO also has ties to WWE, the partial owner, or if not owner of WWE, they're also working with Paramount Plus in the aspect of UFC fights or fight nights will be exclusively on the Paramount Plus network. So I don't know how that relationship's going to be if AEW and Tony Khan decide to go to Paramount Plus and they're allowed to showcase AEW's product on Paramount Plus. I don't know. But I will say this, I mean, the writing is kind of on the wall in the aspect that, Warner Bros. Discovery is going to be sold at some point. And the window of opportunity to still be able to watch AEW's product, in my opinion, is that window is slowly starting to close, piece by piece, to a point where we might not see any more AEW programming if Warner Bros. Discovery does get sold, depending on what entity ends up purchasing the rights of Warner Bros. Discovery. So this could be a huge deal and monumental deal for AEW, not necessarily in a good way, but also in a very bad way, because AEW could possibly have no other choice but to close up shop because they no longer have a TV rights deal. So that could be a huge problem and a huge undertaking for AEW, not only for Tony Khan, but the talent that are in the confines of AEW. So right now, AEW is in a flux, man. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I think there's some people that don't realize that. I mean, if we're looking at the narrative as of right now, and you're somebody out there that has, a TV program, whether it's, Paramount Plus or another streaming service, I mean, obviously you're going to be looking at the analytics of what AEW has done in the past 2.5 years. That's just the way things are, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. And right now, analytically, AEW is in the toilet, man. I mean, they're losing more than they're gaining. I mean, if you're going from what we saw at Full Gear with a decent crowd to going into AEW Dynamite, and yeah, credit, people are like, oh, well, it's right around Thanksgiving or the night before Thanksgiving. Bro, this shit has been going on for quite some time for AEW, so don't sit here and blame the holidays because the ratings were down or ticket sales were down. This shit's been going on for quite some time, and it's progressively getting worse. I mean, if you're looking from All In and how many people were watching All In or present for All In, and then they go to a bingo hall in South Philly where they're barely even selling 1,000 seats, it's a huge fucking problem analytically for AEW. And I made comments about this last week, and I'm going to make the same comments about AEW this week, that AEW's bread and butter right now, as far as ticket sales, hand over fist money, as far as productivity, everything that AEW right now does positively right now would be their pay-per-view model. Which I'm not saying is the greatest because their pay-per-views are severely long, but what I am saying to you is that they're generating revenue solely on their pay-per-views. Ticket sales are up solely for pay-per-views. They're not generating ticket sales for their weekly episodic television. Dynamite and Collision are hurting severely. You know what I mean? And Collision, not for nothing, has been hurting ever since CM Punk left AEW. Because Collision was technically made for the likes of CM Punk. And we all saw how that played out with his tenure in AEW. So, and there's going to be no AEW Shockwave. That shit's chalked. Obviously, I don't think AEW is working with Fox at all. So it's going to be very telling to see what happens with the future of AEW going into 2026, to be honest with you. I mean, not saying that I don't think Tony Khan's completely going to get out of the wrestling business. I mean, obviously he still owns and runs Ring of Honor, which is, I would say, at best, the best word I can describe it as, okay product, if you will. I mean, it's behind a paywall, and it's not the best talent that we're seeing, nor is it the best matches or storylines. But would I be completely surprised and shocked if AEW went out of business? Me personally, no. Now, do I want them to go out of business? Obviously not. But the way things are shaping out to be with AEW, I mean, to me, bro, I don't think Tony Khan even gives a shit about his own product. I really don't. And my standpoint with AEW has been the same since day one, since they got that new TV rights deal, is that Tony Khan and the powers that be at the time were trying to do everything in their power to make AEW a viable product. So when the time came for a TV rights deal, for the people that were, for the executives and the people that were in charge in Warner Bros. Discovery looking at AEW for a TV rights deal, and maybe at one time looked more appealing for AEW to get the TV rights deal and the money they were asking for because they were putting on better television. And they had Cody Rhodes, they had CM Punk, they had star names for the company. Now the company's progressively gotten worse, where its storylines are literally none to shit. Injuries are hindering this company. They're not building younger talent. I mean, it's hindering this company. Now, like I said, I'm happy that Swerve is back. I think Swerve being back in the fold of AEW is great. But it's also storyline and progression and where are we going. And now, am I a big fan of Samoa Joe being the AEW World Champion? No, I'm not. And yeah, I'm a fan of Samoa Joe. I think Samoa Joe has always been one of those guys that have always been severely underrated throughout his entire career. With that being said, do I want the AEW World Title with Samoa Joe? No, I don't. I can honestly give a rat's ass about Samoa Joe being the AEW World Champion, because I think Adam Page should have walked out of that steel cage match still AEW World Champion, to be honest with you, and have a storyline with MJF going into World's End. That's just my opinion. But again, now with Swerve returning, it seemed like he's aligning himself up with Adam Page. You have to ask yourself, where is this going? Because even if we're looking at the concept of Adam Page, Swerve versus the Ops, well, I mean, we're looking at Joe, Hobbs, Hook, and Shibata against the likes of Adam Page and Swerve Strickland. It's 4-on-2. So I don't know where they're going with this. I don't know if they're going to be, there's more people aligning with the likes of Adam Page and Swerve Strickland. Are we going to get Eddie Kingston joining the likes of Adam Page and Swerve Strickland because of what Hook did with the Ops and the fact that Eddie Kingston was teaming up with Hook and Hook pretty much turned his back on Eddie Kingston? So are we getting something where we might get a 4-on-4 tag team matchup here? An 8-man tag? I'm not sure. Does Samoa Joe and Swerve and Page have a match at World's End for the AEW World Title? I mean, it's still up in the air on where we're going here. And I think that's the problem with AEW. I think that's a lot of the people's frustration with this company. I know some people have frustration with, the amount of blood that we see during matches, or the fact that, this, that, and the third. I can give a rat's ass about how much blood we're seeing in AEW's product, because right now it's probably one of the best things that's going. I'm not sitting here saying that we need to have it every single goddamn time, but it's one of the things that makes AEW stick out from everybody else. But we're also not getting storylines or progression with matches. We're just getting the best versus the best. That's why we had the Continental Classic Tournament. That's why we had the Owen. Because it's so easy to make these matches without storyline. Where a lot of fans, including myself, have been patiently waiting for a solid storyline. You know what I mean? A storyline that the fans can get invested into and sink their teeth into, especially if you're a fan like I am, where you're spending $50 a month for AEW pay-per-views and you're getting no story, no logic. They're just putting matches together just for the say-so of it, and those people are still going to spend $50 for just matches. You're not getting any intrigue from these matches. You're not getting excited for these matches. I mean, I've talked to my wife about it, and I'll go back and say this from day one. I think the best wrestling that we got, from the wrestling aspect, the commentary, and the storyline progression in wrestling, the best that we've ever gotten was NXT Black and Gold. Hands down. You're never going to find a better wrestling situation from across the board, whether it's commentary, whether it's storyline, whether it's matches, whether it's progression, than NXT Black and Gold. they had the entire package, whether it's Mauro Ranallo on commentary, to the storylines that we were getting from just Undisputed Era, to Aleister Black, Andrade. The storyline that was there between Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano was one of the best storylines in all pro wrestling. The NXT takeovers were great. 4 or 5 matches that had storyline progression that got you excited. It just, we're never going to get anything like that again. And I wish that we got that again, because it was, for me as a fan, it was some of the most exciting wrestling that I've seen in a very, very long time. Wrestling that made sense, wrestling that, got you excited. And like I said, it was wrestling that made sense for the viewing audience, because you had that storyline to get you intrigued with the match. And the final product was the match that you got, where it could be the women from NXT or the men that were tearing the house down for an NXT takeover. You know what I mean? I mean, you look at an AEW pay-per-view, man, there's anywhere from 9 to 12 matches, and you're watching AEW's product from 8 till damn near 1 o'clock in the morning. It's fucking insane. And by the time you get to the main event, I can only speak for myself, but by the time we get to the main event, I'm exhausted, bro. And it's almost to a point where it's like, you almost give a rat's ass about the main event, and that's what you're there for, but because you have, 10 to 11 other matches that you already seen leading you into the main event. I told you guys before, man, for me personally, it's all about quality over quantity. I'd rather have 5 solid matches than 12 matches that mean absolutely jack shit. And I think WWE, and people, get on WWE's ass about it, man. They're like, oh, well, it's bullshit. They're only putting on maybe 5 or 6 matches. But it's 5 to 6 matches that have storyline and progression throughout the event and throughout Monday Night Raw and SmackDown that build these events. We're not getting that with AEW's product because Tony Khan and AEW seemingly don't give a rat's ass about storylines. For example, we got War Games coming up here relatively soon. There's a lot of storylines alone going into that War Games matchup, number one. 2, the star power that's in that match is incredible. And the storylines coming out of even the men's War Games matches, or the men's War Games match as well as the women's. John Cena versus Dominic Mysterio, and how much that's slowly starting to build up. And the fact that John has put over Dominic Mysterio. It's all about storyline and progression. That's what the fans have been literally salivating for when it pertains to AEW, because a lot of the shit just doesn't make sense. And if AEW continuously has the mindset where we're just going to put on the best matches, well, not for nothing, bro. If you're going to keep doing that, then you constantly had to keep building this roster up so we have those dream matches, because if not, those dream matches that Tony Khan is salivating for, we done seen that same match 3 or 4 fucking times already. It's just something that entertains Tony Khan. He doesn't give a rat's ass about what the fans think. He claims that he does, but he does not. That's why I believe the guy, Tony Khan himself, is delusional. He thinks what he is doing is working. When you can pull up the analytics, you can pull up ticket sales, you can pull up attendance, pay-per-view buys, it's all down, bro. I can't be more real than that. The fact of the matter is that the situation's bad, that AEW made the announcement that they were going to go to smaller venues, rather going to college arenas, if you will, for like college basketball, where they're selling, 12, 13,000 people, and now they're barely even getting 1,000 people, maybe 1,300 max, for these, theaters that they're having these AEW Dynamite episodes on. And they're barely even selling out then. They still got 200-300 seats left, when they can barely sell out, like I said, a bingo hall that holds 1,000 people. That's a big fucking problem. That's a huge problem. Because I can tell you right now, when Cody Rhodes had left, especially CM Punk, a lot of the AEW fan base left when CM Punk left in droves. Absolutely. And there's going to be other names within the confines of AEW, and once they pack their shit up and leave, it's going to be an ultimate gut punch to AEW. I mentioned the likes of MJF. If MJF says, you know what, I did all I can do in AEW, I'm going to take my talents and go to WWE, it's going to be a severe gut punch to AEW, because MJF is that guy, the future of that business. And if he ends up leaving and packing his shit and going to WWE, it's a huge win by far with WWE. Could you imagine a WrestleMania moment that MJF makes his debut? That crowd's going to erupt. You know what I mean? Look how CM Punk returned to WWE after the War Games matchup, Survivor Series. That arena erupted. So, again, you got to look at the narrative with AEW. If certain names leave, it's going to hurt this company. When Tony Storm was having the matches with, I guess now Blake Monroe, a lot of people were up in arms that she went over to NXT. Well, there was, in her mind, in her opinion, she always wanted to go over to WWE, and she felt as if she'd done everything that she could in AEW, being that she was Mariah May. You know what I mean? So again, you're going to have talent that's going to fluctuate back and forth. I mean, you have comments from even Booker T saying, well, all the guys that retire from WWE, they should go there and have their last little run. But to me, Booker T's just, I don't know, man. Sometimes I feel like that guy's just, he's out of pocket. But that's just my opinion. But at the end of the day, I genuinely feel if AEW got back to telling story and getting the fans invested in the product, man, this would be a whole different ball game for AEW. I'm not sitting here saying that AEW is going to be taking over the wrestling business. I'm not sitting here saying that. But I'll say this, in the fact that for AEW, the deck is stacked against them. You know, you had the possible sale of Warner Brothers Discovery, possibly going into the new year. You have TNA literally on the heels of AEW being the number 2 company in the world. And on top of that, there are rumors and speculation that TNA will somehow lock in a TV rights deal going into 2026. And there's also rumors and speculation is once they secure that TV rights deal, WWE wants TNA to go head-to-head with AEW to 100% put them out of business. And if that's the case, and with what TNA has been doing as of late, they're cooking with gas right now. And with the fact that TNA is working with WWE, it's a win-win for TNA. Especially if they get that TV rights deal. It's going to put a lot of pressure for the powers that be in AEW, most specifically Tony Khan. How can Tony Khan rebound from that? And how can AEW stick around and have progression so they can stay around? That's the biggest question mark going into 2026. But I'll also say, in the respect to AEW, that the wrestling from both sides of the fence of 2025 has not been the greatest. 2025 has been a very interesting year when it pertains to pro wrestling. It's been all over the place. We've had some highs, but we also had a lot of lows, a lot of mishaps, a lot of confusion. It's been a lot. So 2025 has been literally chalked, in my honest opinion, as far as pro wrestling is concerned. Now, I'm hoping that can change going into 2026, to be honest with you, because I think a lot of things are going to happen for, pretty much across the board, whether it's WWE, TNA, as well as AEW. But AEW needs to get back to what brought them to the dance. There's also, there's that rumbling that a reunion possibly with the Elite. That's something that AEW possibly needs to entertain. Not only for the fans of AEW, but for the likes of Matt and Nick Jackson, as well as Kenny Omega. Because right now, there's really not a lot going on for the Bucks and Kenny Omega. It looks like they're having some kind of storyline here with the Don Callis family. I think they should reunite the Elite. Matt and Nick have been doing Being the Elite episodes on YouTube. They bring that back with Kenny Omega. And just kind of go back to what brought you to the dance, man. And that's what AEW needs to do. Because at this point, bro, you got to do something. You got to do something. And that's the biggest thing that I loved about AEW, in my opinion, especially in the first 3 years of AEW, is that how vastly different they were than the WWE product. And the shit they were doing, the storylines they were doing, the theatrics, if you will, especially with like Jericho and MJF and their storyline. We need to get back to that. AEW needs to get back to having some fun. And not be so uptight, not be a bunch of, just bullshit artists. Go back to what brought you to the dance, man. Go back to having a little bit of fun with this shit. Because when they have fun and they go back to what brought them to the dance, bro, this is a whole different fucking ball game for AEW. And I feel like certain talents there are miserable. Like I mentioned Kenny Omega, man. And Kenny Omega seems like he doesn't even want to fucking be there. He's not having fun. He's not enjoying himself. It's more or less a chore for him to be at AEW now than what it once was in the first 3 years of AEW. AEW was red hot in the first 3 years of its existence, bro. Now, the shit that we got, it is a complete and utter dumpster fire, what we're getting now. It's hot garbage. It really is. And I don't know what they're trying to hold on to. I don't know what Tony Khan has in store for us, but there needs to be fucking change, man. Seriously, you got some free agents, and that's the thing, too. I'm not sitting here saying that every free agent needs to come to AEW. But I know there's a couple free agents right now, one most specifically, that if you brought this person in, it would change not only the dynamic for AEW, but it would get the fans excited for AEW again. Not only because of the talent this person is, but the mindset that he has for pro wrestling, and that's none other than Karrion Kross. If I was Tony Khan and the powers that be, I'd be throwing anything in the world at Karrion Kross to bring him into AEW. Because, I mean, he's even made comments with Scarlett that if they go to AEW, they want to be there lifelong. They want to end their career in AEW. Cross is a person that if they brought him in, I mean, it's going to shake up the landscape for AEW. And I mean, to me, the biggest pitch that I would have for me as far as Karrion Kross, if he were to come in and join AEW, is there's some hostility between Jon Moxley and the Death Riders, where they had enough of Moxley's shit, and they ultimately turn on Moxley and beat the dog shit out of Jon Moxley. Moxley takes a hiatus. He turns babyface, and he attacks the remaining members of the Death Riders, but the Death Riders bring in a new leader. And that new leader is none other than Karrion Kross. And Kross, teaming with Claudio, Pac, Yuta, Marina Shafir, and you bring them in, bring Kross in with that element, bro, that is definitely something that I would entertain. It's definitely something that would spark my interest. And it's definitely a match to make in any kind of capacity to have Jon Moxley face off one-on-one with Karrion Kross in an AEW ring. That's what I would do if I was going to bring in the likes of a Karrion Kross. Because Kross has a great mind for the business, man. He's very... I don't know the right terminology to use, but he has a really good mind for the business. He really knows the ins and outs. He's very articulate. He's very creative with his character in pro wrestling and the mindset that he has and the stories that Kross could tell. I mean, imagine some of the backstage vignettes that Kross could have. You know, him in the backstage locker room, him in the parking lot, something like that would, you know, really entice who Karrion Kross is. That's what I would do. And right now, if they brought in someone like Karrion Kross, it could be a small spark for AEW for fans to get invested because it's Karrion Kross. Why not? You know, there's other talent out there, too, that people have been patiently waiting on. Dakota Kai, Shayna Baszler. I know Lacey Lane just signed an exclusive deal with AEW. They should have brought in Katana Chance as well. She's also a free agent. Shayna Baszler, Dakota Kai, Authors of Pain. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Bring them in. Karrion Kross. You know what I mean? They if you're going to do dream matches, then you need to hire new talent. Because you can't give us the same dream matches that you think are dream matches that we've already seen countless fucking times already in the past 6 years of AEW's existence. There needs to be change, and there needs to be storyline. Without it, it's a sinking ship for AEW. Things need to change, and they need to go back to what brought them to the dance. And I think if they do that, AEW can get back to what they once was at one time. But with that being said, though, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.